Hey, big fucking dreamers. So pumped to be here with you today to discuss a topic that I hear about all the time. It's something that also I've experienced and had to take a significant period off of work. And this is talking about burnout. Now, burnout is one of those words really similar to imposter syndrome that has kind of taken hold in the corporate zeitgeist and gets really just thrown around. And I myself have even done it without actually understanding what it really means. So, when I talk about burnout today, I'm going to be talking about an area of study by Susan Jackson and Christina Maslach. And this is their study. They did a study around understanding the three dimensions of burnout. This is going to be useful for you today to really understand and bring awareness to what you're experiencing. This is if you feel like you are pretty unmotivated at work. You also feel like nothing that you do actually matters. Maybe you don't feel aligned to what you do anymore. I see a lot of people do this, come to me when they're working in tech or they're working in law or they're even in finance, and they're like, nothing I do matters. I'm not actually fucking helping anyone. I'm selling software, or I'm helping, M&As through other companies. I feel really disconnected from it. But you also feel like emotionally drained, like you've got nothing to give, like you pour so much into work. And then also you feel like a heightened sense of cynicism as well, both toward the people you work with, maybe toward your client base. So this is going to help you bring a lot of awareness to it and also understand what's really going on more from a research perspective. If you've listened to this podcast and you know my story, I have a lot of experience with burnout. And in 2020, I was experiencing a lot of dizziness. Whenever I opened my laptop, I started to get really dizzy. I thought I had a blood pressure issue. And I remember sitting in my doctor's office and she was like, "There's nothing wrong with you." And I was like, "No, please test me again. There's something wrong." Anytime I do anything related to work, I just said I was dizzy all the time. And she was like, "Well, what are you doing when you're dizzy?" I'm like, "It's anytime I open my laptop." I was also getting sick all of the time. I had a lot of other stuff going on besides this. It was a few years prior, I had received a PTSD diagnosis that I never fully dealt with because it was from some significant childhood trauma. And it kind of all came to a head at this point in my career where my doctor and my therapist looked at me and both of them agreed, and both of them were having phone calls about it. And they both said, you need to actually stop working. And if you don't stop working, you might never be able to work again. That's how extreme this is. So that then took me to really take some time off of work. I was, doing kind of intensive PTSD treatment for probably about 6 months. And I really had to redefine my relationship with work. But today, sometimes it's not that, it doesn't need to be that severe as well, in terms of I had other things that were going on in my own life that were not just burnout related, but that were also mental health related. However, I'm going to go into what are the three defining characteristics of burnout, because I really want people to be careful with their language, because when you say even flippantly, I'm burnt out, you're telling yourself something. So your body is always listening to you. So you really want to be careful in what are the words that you're using to describe your certain state. And also, if you do match these three characteristics, then there is a high likelihood that you are actually burnt out. And then we're going to talk about what you can do about it. So what are the three dimensions of burnout? According to, Maslach and Jackson, the first one is emotional exhaustion. So this is really like you've poured everything into your work, into other people, and you've actually got nothing else you've got nothing left to give. So it's almost just like you are super depleted. You feel like you're really lacking energy to be consistently productive. You feel like even your sleep habits changed. Maybe you have some dizziness, maybe you have headaches, like you're really just getting trouble even going. Something that also, like, this could also look like endless scrolling. This could also like just never really feeling rested as well. So it's the first characteristic. The second characteristic is depersonalization and cynicism. Like you almost are detached from what you actually do. really disillusioned about your job. It's almost like what I do doesn't matter. Like a lot of people will come to me in software sales. They'll be like, I'm just selling software. I'm not changing the world. This doesn't actually matter. I'm not making a difference in the world. You could be like feeling cynical about your clients as well. Like you could just be like, these motherfuckers, like I don't even care about them. Like they're just bothering me all the time. They're just doing this, doing that. So it's like you feel like almost everyone's coming at you, but you're really detached. You don't really want to make a difference because you feel like you're not really making a difference at all. And you're not aligned to the organizational structures. So therefore, it is inciting a sense of cynicism. Then the third thing is you actually feel like your performance is starting to suffer. Like you feel like a sense of inefficacy where you're not actually making a difference. What I also see is that people's performance actually does start to suffer in sales. Let's say their sales numbers start to go down. They're not bringing in as many client work. So in these type of environments where they are quoted and where there are metrics against it, I do actually see people that exhibiting signs of burnout, that their performance really is starting to suffer. But not only that, feeling like there's a real lack of satisfaction from your achievements. Feeling like nothing you do really matters. I do just want to caveat, like this is a very, really rough place to be in. I remember looking around when I was working at LinkedIn and just thinking like, this isn't what I want to be doing. Like, I don't want to be selling software to recruitment agencies. This is not it for me. But just feeling like a real sense of hopelessness and feeling like, well, I don't really know what to do. But I do want to say that all of this, like rehabilitation for this is possible. And it doesn't always look as extreme as needing to say take 6 months off or needing to take a year off. I've seen people really recover from this by putting some steps in place. Susan, Jackson, and Maslach also identified really 6 characteristics or 6 mismatches that fueled burnout. So if you feel like if you're identifying with those 3 characteristics of burnout, here's a step deeper. So here's how to really understand what's going on. And why this really matters is because when people want to change their career, but they can't properly diagnose what's actually going on, they stay stuck. So these 6 mismatches are a really good way to diagnose, okay, if I understand what's really going on, then I know what needs to change. First one is workload. There's too much demand and too little recovery. In essence, this is just you are getting too much work to keep up with. Therefore, you have to work 12-hour days, 14-hour days. You have to work weekends because there's really no other option. I see this in consulting. I see this in law. I see this in finance. So there are certain industries that are notorious for this. And I think even in law, one of my clients was saying it's like the ratio is like work 11 hours, bill 7 or something like that. It's the 11-7 ratio because you can't bill all of your clients for the work that you do. So that means that you're going to have to work overtime. And I have seen clients actually, really understand like, I'm thinking of one client in particular. You'll know who you are if you listen to this, but she kept coming to me saying like, there's no work-life balance here. There's no work-life balance. And then I said, okay, well, does your boss have work-life balance? Does, your colleague have work-life balance? Because if they don't have work-life balance and they are like the organization demands that they also do this workload, then you're basically fighting against a problem that you can't solve. And researchers Dave Evans and Bill Burnett they have a really good book called Designing Your Life. They're researchers at Stanford, but they call this a gravity problem. So if your workload is too much that you can't do it in the time allotted, but that you constantly have to work over, this is a problem that you are not going to be able to change unless you are an executive or unless you are the one deciding, how much workload gets allotted. But if you're the one actually performing the work, this is what's called a gravity problem. And a gravity problem isn't really a problem, it's a circumstance. So this means that you're not able to influence anything. So this is extremely important because if you want work-life balance, if you feel like you are emotionally exhausted, which then is causing cynicism, which then is causing inefficacy, and a lot of it just has to do with the workload that you're given, the acceptance that it's not going to change. So your relationship with it has to change or your outlook with it has to change. Now, there are some industries where I actually don't really see workload as the problem. It's usually people's relationship to workload, which is like they take on more work voluntarily and that's why they're causing burnout. So really get honest here of, is it the actual workload or am I volunteering to take on work? Because sometimes the workload actually might not be that extreme. It's just you. It's just you, you're rescuing, your inability to say no, your inability to not jump in at every little problem. So get quite honest here because those are two very separate issues. And one of them, which is the workload, is too intense that you can't meet it consistently. So you're constantly having to work overtime. That usually will cause a career shift in someone versus if it's more of a relational issue, which means that you continue to take on work because of rescuing tendencies or fawning tendencies or people pleasing tendencies, that is a totally different line of treatment. So that's number one in the 6 mismatches. Number 2 is control. So this is lack of autonomy or decision power. You feel like you don't have any agency over what you're doing. You don't have any influence of the work, and also you don't like it. Then that is going to contribute more to burnout. The third is reward. So this is like, do you feel like you have inadequate recognition or inadequate pay for what you do? Sometimes with clients that are working really overtime, like what I will have them do is I'll actually have them calculate their hourly rate. So let's say that, they get paid like pretty good money, but they have to work 12, 14-hour days. They're consistently working over. We then look at, what are you making hourly? Is that worth it to you based on what you have to do? So then the fourth is community. Do you have a community around you? Do you feel a sense of connection with your colleagues? Or do you feel like there is toxicity in your workplace? Do you feel like it's kind of dog eat dog? Is that also the work culture? That's going to contribute more likely to burnout. The fifth one is fairness. So this is perceived inequality or favoritism. So I would be careful with this because I have a lot of clients who have a really strong justice part of them or a really strong martyr part of them. So really, if you're saying things are constantly unfair, I would question, is this a thought that I have had my whole life? Is this something that I constantly come up against? Because again, it could be the way that you're viewing the world, or you might actually say, no, this is actually just unfair. And that is totally valid as well. And then the sixth one, and this is extremely important, is values. So there's a misalignment between your personal values and the organization's values. If, you're working for an organization that's like, we will lie, cheat, and steal to make money, to get the deal done, do whatever you have to do, and that's out of your integrity, that is then starting to gnaw at you. So what can we really do about this? First thing is to really identify which mismatch is the strongest. Probably the most intense ones, like workload, is definitely a huge one. Also, values misalignment, I see that a lot. So really understanding like which one is the strongest right now, but what am I trying to solve for? And this is what I say to a lot of my clients, especially in the life and work transformation, is what season are you in your life? Like, what is the most important thing to you right now? And I think that if you are feeling burnt out and you know that your career, that you do want to make a career switch or you want to make a career pivot, it's really important to say like, okay, what am I solving for? Then let's say it is workload. How can you get better at asking questions, whether this is during an interview process or vetting things out earlier? How can you make sure that this is something that you're not going to come up against? And there are some hard truths here in that if you work in law or you work in, let's say, private equity or you work in management consulting, this is also just the reality of your industry. So really like acknowledging what is your industry, what are the truths about it, and you may have to have some compromises here. Now, there is also a body of research that says like burnout does happen when demands outweigh the resources for too long. So if you can't remove all of the demands, which not everyone can, then you have to find a way to create better resources. A lot of this looks like, okay, a way to build more resources. Number one is looking at autonomy. So how do you get more agency over your time? In some careers, this is more possible than others. Like, for example, I'm in entrepreneurship. I have extreme agency over my time. I go to the gym during the day. I really really try not to work on weekends. Like I really build my own schedule. But a big trade-off over that is I don't have the stability of a salary. These are trade-offs that we're willing to make. I am actually more willing to have complete autonomy over my time and sacrifice not having a consistent salary. But that for me is very aligned with my values. Number two is how can you really build more connection? So if you feel like you are in a toxic work environment, and sometimes this does happen, I would really start to look around into who is not feeding into the toxicity, because there will likely be people that don't really participate, but your eyes maybe haven't been open to that yet. So start to really look around for that. Third thing is like really looking at how are you resting, especially on the weekends? Is your weekend jam-packed with plans? Are your weeknights jam-packed with plans? Are you drinking? Are you smoking? Are you using drugs? Are you endless doom scrolling? Are you just like vegging out and eating really shitty on the weekends because you are so exhausted and burnt out? So how can you start to take higher quality rest time? Which means like, how can you really work on whether that's meditation, going to a yin yoga class, going for a walk, whether it's eating real quality food. So again, like we're really looking at controlling the controllables. This sounds really basic, but when I often look at people that are struggling with this and I start to dig into their daily habits and behaviors and I start to ask about their water consumption, their sleep habits, their diet, usually all of these things are out of whack somewhere. If I start to ask about their exercise, the foundations aren't really there. So when we're looking at helping recalibrate from burnout and readjust from burnout, we need to really see are the solid foundations there so that you can then work with, whether that's making a career switch or whether that's changing the way that you're doing things at work. Last thing I would say is like really understanding, what is success to you? Is your success output focused or is your success kind of goal oriented? So if it's goal oriented, which means I make 400K a year, or success to me is I am a keynote speaker in front of 10,000 people, or success to me is, I make President's Club, whatever. Is it specific goal oriented or is it actually process oriented? I would try to gear it more toward focusing on the process. So success to me is, getting like doing these three things really well this week. So that's maybe calling 5 clients. That could be for me putting out 4 pieces of content and doing 2 podcast episodes. I try not to, while I definitely have goals in place, like I've got revenue goals in place, I have client goals in place. James Clear, the writer of Atomic Habit, how do you look at success as like the process, not the destination, or the journey, not the destination? Again, this stuff is extremely cliche, but it's actually highly valuable when you put it in place. So really looking at what are my success markers? For example, it is working out 4 times a week, sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, drinking a lot of water. It is like taking time out on Sundays to like do a puzzle or, meet with a friend and take a long walk. Like I used to view success as like being the absolute best, but I had to really redefine my relationship with myself. When we're looking at this, like what we do in the life and work transformation is we look at this also from a parts perspective. So what parts have driven this behavior? How is that no longer working for you? So we really start to unpack like the subconscious behind all of these behaviors, because sometimes you will have a part of you that's really driving you forward toward achievement, that's saying like, I need to achieve at all costs. But then another part of your system is like, I'm super exhausted. I'm super cynical. I need to change this. That's what's called like a parts polarization. You have 2 parts that are kind of in conflict with each other. We need to understand as well, what are the subconscious things driving this behavior that's leading toward the burnout? The goal of this episode is really to bring more awareness as to what's happening. If you feel like you're burnt out, do you identify with the 3 characteristics up front? Okay, if you do, then which of the 6 mismatches are you experiencing? How can you then try to solve for those? Are your foundations super solid? Do you rest adequately? Do you exercise enough? Do you sleep enough? Okay, no, let's get those sorted first. Then you can start to redefine what success really looks like to you. So all in all, I do just want to say that these are things that you can solve for with the right structure and with the right support. This is definitely a lot of the type of work that we do in life and work transformation. more at a bringing the subconscious to the consciousness. So it's not like a specific burnout rehabilitation course, although it does look at a lot of these factors and what are driving a lot of these behaviors. And then how do we get your non negotiables really right so that you can then go forth and be in a career that you really love, that you find emotionally and mentally sustaining. Let me know if you experience any of these. I would really love to hear from you. Also, the next round of the Life and Work Transformation, it's filling up fast. So if you are listening to this, we've got another round at the end of October. Then we have another round that's already filling up fast for January as well. So if you want to work with me, this is the last chance to sign up for this year. And let me know what you thought of this episode. Big fucking dreamers. I hope that you got something from it today. And I will see you in 2 weeks.